Welcome back to New Rockstars, I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of the Book of Boba Fett Episode 5, which leaves behind nearly everything we've been tracking about Boba Fett and his Boba Baths, slipping off that book jacket to reveal this as one horny chapter of Mando.
Hey look everyone, it's Mando!
I mean, not that I'm complaining, this episode was packed with Star Wars Easter eggs, lore, and really cool visual details that you might have missed, so I'm gonna break it all down.
Ready to have your mind blown?
We open in a Klatooinian meatpacking plant. Those meat carcasses aren't identified, but in the concept art in the closing credits, they look like Nerf heads. Nerfs, in addition to the sickest way to spend a Saturday afternoon, are Hurd animals first mentioned in Empire Strikes Back.
Half-witted, scruffy-looking Nerf herder.
The ironic butchery in a butcher shop, the bounty's blood to later dripping on the kill floor beside that dripping meat, is a classic gangland trope. From Frankie Carbone in the meat truck in Goodfellas to the first episode of The Sopranos when Christopher whacks a meal in Santani's butchery. This chill temperature also returns Din Djarin to his bounty in the pilot episode on the icy planet of Pagadon, which he calls back directly.
I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold. I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold.
But our first look at Mando shows only his silhouette through the greasy flaps, framed so that his Beskar spear is visible, telling us that this is not Boba Fett, it's not a leader, but still a hunter. And of course his entrance is announced with Ludwig Göransson's flute theme for the character. His bounty is Kaba Baiz, played by stunt actor Ardashir Radpour, who also works on Obi-Wan Kenobi. Mando has a tracking fob, and the bounty puck translates to wanted in Arabesh, listing his bounty as 9,830 credits, significantly more than the 7,300 wanted for that Mithril in Mando Episode 1. Baiz pretends to be just another Klatooinian, but they designed him with distinctive piercings on his nose and his jowl to make him unmistakable from that puck. Now, the moment Mando ignites a Darksaber, his arm lowers slightly, its weight already noticeable. And as he fights them with it, the saber drags along the ground, sloppily slices nearby meat, and Mando burns his own leg. This sets up the true conflict for this episode, Din Djarin versus his own Darksaber.
You are fighting against the blade.
The legendary figure who forged this weapon, Paz Vizsla, was both a Jedi and Mandalorian. But Din Djarin now feels like neither. Mando did win that saber rightfully according to their creed, besting Moff Gideon in a duel, yet still the weapon weighs awkwardly in his hands, a cursed artifact that the Armorer believes led to the genocide of their people. And I think that is what has him spooked, that leaving Grogu in the hands of the sorcerers who build and wield these unwieldy weapons might have been a mistake. The episode title is introduced by fusing the Boba Fett music with the flute of the Mandalorian theme. Mando visits this amazingly designed curved ribbon urban landscape, Ring City, lit by a nearby star that casts a moving shadow on itself to simulate day and night. I just love the production design. Alternating patches of day and night on that ring, moving so fast. Hope you get blackout curtains because it's gonna be hard to get 8 hours of sleep. The whole design of the city evokes other sci-fi space communities like Elysium, Interstellar, Halo 3, Larry Niven's novel Ringworld. And in classic Star Wars fashion, we start in super close-up on the space structure before we even know what it is, and actually our very first glimpse of it shows the dark unlit backside of it, the industrial substrata. This is the area used as the home to the survivors of Din Djarin's Mandalorian clan. You might actually be able to see the exact ledge where Mando finds the Armorer later. Director Bryce Dallas Howard pulls off one of the most impressive long takes we've ever seen in Star Wars, a full 2 minutes and 18 seconds without cutting, tracking Mando into the turbo lift, through the party, into the Guildmaster's room, then back through the party, then down the turbo lift to a lower level than he was before. And they didn't mask any cuts in this. It was truly done practically. And assuming they didn't build this entire building and didn't do all of this in that light box thing they have, it looks like they used the time that he spent in the lift to rotate him 90 degrees past a green screen or LED background to the party set. And then when he went back in the lift, they rotate him again, having used all that time to change out the original set to a lower level set that they must have rolled in. This is some true David Copperfield shit, and I love it because it makes this all feel so immersive. It's the same kind of practical magic we sense on Disney's Rise of the Resistance. Like, wait, how did we get in this room? Did we roll? I think we rolled, or we pivoted. One of the others. But most importantly, this long take reveals the way Mando is dealing with the pain of his Darksaber wound. Because notice, whenever he has to share a crowded space, he hides his limp and stifles his winces until finally, when he's alone on that lift, he releases his pain. Now, as anyone in these awesome fictional universes could tell you, crashing around in crazy vehicles and shooting stuff with our friends is fun. And in the super fun 5 vs 5 shooter mobile game, Tacticool, you get to do a lot of blasting. Play with 20 million players around the world in this award-winning game, named the best competitive game by Google Play. Download the game right now by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code on screen. Use the promo code TACTIDE to get some great in-game bonuses. 50 Jason shards, an RPG, and 50,000 silver. There's multiple gameplay modes, including Battle Royale and Zombie Survival. There's lots of weapons to use and 28 different operators to unlock. Drive cars with online teammates. Shoot from windows, break fences, or get stuck in a swamp. It's great playing with live players to see what your opponent does. Your success depends on team play and smart tactics. It's cool that each character has their own unique skills. They even have a character who walks around with a 4-barreled grenade launcher like Schwarzenegger in Commando. So support new Rockstars by downloading Tacticool from the link in the description or the QR code on screen. Use promo code TACTIDE and get 50 Jason shards, an RPG, and 50,000 silver. Now, he shared that looked initially with a Cascadag, and in the party he passed a 3-eyed Gran, also a Charger fan, and greets the Ishi Tib Guildmaster, who's voiced by Helen Sadler, who has voiced several Star Wars animated characters, including Jyn Erso on Battlefront. Also sitting at the table is a Quarren. Now, down in the below levels, he follows all these hidden glyphs, literally pointing "this is the way" to a final glyph in the shape of a Mythosaur skull. That is the beast defeated by Mandalore the First and painted on Boba Fett's armor as well. He finds the Armorer in the substrata below, meditating with her hammer and tongs crossed on her chest, always seen with these because these are her most sacred tools. We also see her later wielding these as weapons while sparring against the Darksaber. She uses these both to literally rebuild her people and their armor, but also to metaphorically rebuild their spirit. Paz Vizsla attends to him.
I didn't know if I would ever see you again. Thank you for saving me on Navarre.
Paz, of course, is played by Jon Favreau himself, a former rival to Din Djarin, angry over his accepting stolen Beskar as payment, and a descendant of House Vizsla in the Death Watch, in which his father Pre-Vizsla was first seen wielding the Darksaber as the heir to Tar Vizsla, who forged this saber. Paz applies some Bacta spray to the burn, a more concentrated version of the fluid in Boba's healing tank, and then Mando reveals the Darksaber.
This.
Paz Vizsla, bring it to me.
I love the music switching to cryptic strings as Paz recognizes this weapon. The Armorer calls him by his full name as if to underline his ancestral claim to it, and Paz cradles this hilt reverently. And then as the Armorer twists the blade in her hand, I like how you can see its flatness making it disappear from view as she twists it, a contrast to the pole shape of most other lightsabers. And then the Armorer reminds us of the Darksaber succession rule.
If it is won by creed in battle, it is said one warrior will defeat 20, and the multitudes will fall before it. If, however, it is not won in combat and falls into the hands of the undeserving, it will be a curse unto the nation. Mandalore will be laid to waste, and its people scattered to the four winds.
And as the Armorer talks about the history of Tar Vizsla, the frame places his descendant Paz directly center so that when the Armorer hands back the Darksaber, it passes directly in front of him, and then the transition wipe closes on him specifically. Mando tells Paz that he took the lightsaber from Moff Gideon, whom he didn't kill.
But he was sent off to the New Republic for interrogation, and he will face justice for his crimes.
Now, the New Republic Tribunal would be located around Chandrila, but at this point in history, the New Republic government struggled to organize, with many political rivals to Leia Organa that led to her resignation and formation of the Resistance. So yeah, who knows if Moff Gideon will truly face real justice? The Armorer says,
The songs of eons past foretold of the Mythosaur rising up to herald a new age of Mandalore. Sadly, it only exists in legends.
Yeah, some fun meta wording here. Only existing in legends, referring to expanded universe lore that is no longer considered canon. However, with The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, Filoni, Favreau, Rodriguez, these guys have really made it a mission to restore Legends elements as official backstory once more. So this Mythosaur legend is as true as anything else in Star Wars. Mando says his Beskar spear was given to him by a Jedi, referring to Ahsoka Tano last season, but Ahsoka actually got it from Morgan Elspeth, who serves Grand Admiral Thrawn. Thrawn, I'm wondering, may have been the one to order the bombing of Mandalore and the purge of its Beskar. Thus why the Armorer melting it down from a weapon back to armor is what triggers the flashback to those events in this episode. But first, they talk some shit about Bo-Katan Kryze.
Bo-Katan is a cautionary tale. She once laid claim to rule Mandalore based purely on blood and the sword you now possess. But it was gifted to her and not won by creed. Bo-Katan Kryze was born of a mighty house, but they lost sight of the way. Her rule ended in tragedy. They lost their way, and we lost our world.
Now, reminder that Bo-Katan was given the Darksaber by Sabine Wren in Rebels, and at that time it was really presented as a solemn homecoming of a sacred sword to Mandalore's native daughter, the heiress of the Mandalorian people. But now the Armorer is suggesting that that false succession triggered a curse that doomed all of Mandalore. And the glowing spearhead bisects the Mandalorian moon of Concordia in this cross dissolve. In the animated series, Concordia was the refuge of the Death Watch, which in live action became the Watch group of the Mandalorians that we are now with. And finally, we see the Great Purge and the Night of a Thousand Tears that Moff Gideon mentioned in the season 1 finale, with a fleet of TIE bombers wrecking the surface of Mandalore, emitting nuclear-sized mushroom clouds. That dome structure that blows up is an entire Mandalorian city, which they encase inside of massive domes like this. As that flame wall rushes toward us, in the foreground is a Mandalorian helmet discarded on the ground. Imperial probe droids and KX enforcer droids, these are the kind K2SO was in Rogue One, comb these ruins where more corpses and discarded helmets wait for plundering. It's clear that they did not send human soldiers into this mess because the conditions were so toxic. And of course, all the imagery here seems directly inspired by James Cameron's apocalyptic future imagery in T2 Judgment Day. Now, Boba Fett referred to this last season.
Mandalore, the Empire turned that planet to glass.
But Bo-Katan also refuted this exact narrative.
That planet is cursed. Anyone who goes there dies. Once the Empire knew they couldn't control it, they made sure no one else could either.
Don't believe everything you hear.
Now, it's not clear if the Armorer is casting all of this as a causality of a Darksaber curse, or just suggesting the improper succession was a reflection of Bo-Katan's poor leadership that eventually led to this. But either way, everything in Star Wars comes from a certain point of view, and I think it's fair to assume that not everything on Mandalore was destroyed, and this all might have been exaggerated by imp propaganda in the midst of rival clans. Like, this Armorer might have her own agenda to hyperbolize that destruction and blame Bo-Katan for it. Mando asks the Armorer to forge something for Grogu.
In order to master the ways of the Force, Jedi must forego all attachment.
That is the opposite of our creed. Loyalty and solidarity are the way.
Now, Ahsoka did warn Mando about this.
His attachment to you makes him vulnerable to his fears. I've seen what such feelings can do to a fully trained Jedi Knight. To the best of us.
So what changed after Mando handed off Grogu to Luke Skywalker for Jedi training? I think the Darksaber does carry with it a kind of mysticism. If not a genocidal curse, at least a self-inflicting burden that has made Mando second-guess the wisdom of the weirdos who wield these things. They forged the spear into what looks like chainmail armor for Grogu, Mithril, which does make sense for a child that Mando won't know the exact size of or how large he'll grow. The Armorer ties it into a bundle that adorably takes the shape of Grogu's head. Now later they spar. Yeah, those are the Mandoa words for 1, 2, 3, and 4. And all this parallels Kanan Jarrus training Sabine in Rebels when she was learning to use the Darksaber. Both the counting and the way that the Darksaber's weight depends on the connection with you.
The blade feels lighter.
You're connecting with it. It's becoming a part of you.
Finally, Mando's able to block a hit, and I love how her Beskar tools brighten up, but they do not bend, making an interesting sound.
There, feel it? You are too weak to fight the Darksaber. It will win if you fight against it.
Yeah, that metal's vibrating to a higher and higher pitch, as if the Darksaber itself is hissing in rage. So Paz Vizsla makes a claim for the Darksaber, and the tool duel, both removing their jetpacks so that now if either of them fall, it's game over, man. Paz uses his vibro blade, the weapon that came up in their fight in season 1, aiming it straight for Mando's shoulder at first, but Mando destroys both the blade and Paz's shield with one swipe of the Darksaber, but Paz gets the upper hand.
Fate has brought this blade back to my clan, and our fate will end yours!
Yeah, Paz struggles with this weight even more than Mando did, and his pose as he holds it definitely evokes the macho Spaceballs energy of these kind of duels. But Mando defeats him by using the same move that Paz initially used in this fight, Vibro Blade to the gaps in the armor. Mando goes for the death by 1,000 cuts method, and it works, but only because Paz refuses to let go of the Darksaber to defend himself. He fought the Darksaber, not his opponent. And I like how each time Mando stabs him, you can hear a little flute of the Mandalorian theme coming in. But despite his victory, Mando must confess that he did once take off his helmet, leading to him getting shunned, unless he is able to atone.
According to Creed, one may only be redeemed in the living waters beneath the mines of Mandalore.
These living waters of Mandalore are yet another new piece of Star Wars lore, another example of how this series expands mysticism beyond Jedi dogma. The Tuskens have a nose lizard that takes you on trippy quests to a mystical gappy tree. The Mandalorians have this underground spring that presumably feeds their Beskar mines. In both cases, an element of nature from which they derive their sacred weaponry and armor and renewing their souls. I believe that all of these religions are really just different interpretations of the same force. As Mando departs with his jetpack and Darksaber, the Armorer keeps her back to him, tools in hand, just as she was when he first arrived. So Mando tries to board a commercial starliner, passing a guy wearing the same white range trooper coat that we saw in Solo: A Star Wars Story, but he's stopped by a security droid, the same RX series droid who deals cards in Garsa Fwip's Sanctuary, and originally the series designed for Disney's Star Tours ride, now DJing in Oga's Cantina in Galaxy's Edge. Mando has to unload his blaster, all of his whistling birds, his bandolier shells, the vibroblade, detonator charges, grappling wire, and the Darksaber, all the things we have seen him use to kill people. On the trip, a Rodian kid waves at him, clearly reminding Mando of Grogu, because he pulls out that Grogu-shaped bundle. And listen to the music. Yes, that is the Grogu theme from the exact scene where Mando learned his name.
Grogu?
and they land on Tatooine.
Welcome to Mos Eisley. On behalf of all our crew, thank you for traveling Starliner Travel.
Yeah, I like how the departure droid from the Ring City functioned fine, but the arrival droid at Tatooine is all glitchy, kind of like when you land in LaGuardia and the Delta Agent pukes on you. In the shot of Pelimoto, a BD droid hobbles out. This is the same kind of droid as BD-1, friend to Cal Kestis in Jedi Fallen Order. I even like how his foot drags injured, just like how BD-1's foot gets damaged in the game, but a Womp Rat grabs it. These are the rodents Luke bragged about shooting.
Placed a bullseye womp rats in my T-16 back home. They're not much bigger than 2 meters.
Her other droids include her pit droids, a WED Treadwell repair droid, originally from a deleted scene in the 1977 film, and our good friend R5-D4, the same astromech with the busted motivator that Luke and Uncle Owen almost bought in the original film. We saw Peli with most of these cameo in episode 3. Remember, Luke did say womp rats aren't much bigger than 2 meters, reminding us that these things can still get pretty big, and 5'1" Amy Sedaris is definitely at risk. Yeah, Pelimoto gets pulled away as if a velociraptor's eating her, which kind of feels like Bryce Dallas Howard throwing a nod to her Jurassic Park franchise. Mando saves her and she greets him.
Hey, look everyone, it's Mando!
Yeah, they all groan because Mando hates droids, and the first time he saw these guys, he shot at them. And Peli reveals her replacement ship, an N-1 starfighter from the Royal Guard of Naboo, seen in Phantom Menace. Now, it's not exactly the fighter that Anakin piloted because that Futhark language on the side of the cockpit is different. The letters on this one translate to B-H-E, it's gibberish, it's gibberish. I mean, either use these to spell out something every time or don't. She finds a nest of scurriers, meaning she literally hadn't touched these scraps for weeks. And she says this fighter will be faster than a Fathier, referencing the racing animals on the tracks of Canto Bight seen in The Last Jedi. Peli talks about her love life.
Dated a Jawa for a while. They're quite furry. Very furry. A lot of issues. That's okay. I'm working on me right now. Furry.
Oh my god, we need those Peli flashbacks. What inner scars is she now trying to heal from?
Furry.
Now the Gonk droid they use to power the ship is marked with Orabesh letters DB, I assume for dim balls, based on the way Mando talks about his scompling shaft later.
There's a Gonk Scomp Jack.
The Jawas bring them a cryogenic density combustion booster, which is the same prop as the pole that Han Solo tried to use as a brace in the trash compactor in the Death Star. After initially intimidating the droids, Mando finally credits BD.
Thanks, little guy.
And Peli says the Jawas could find a Scud in a krill pond. Scud was actually the name of Jabba the Hutt's henchmen in the 70s comics. Krill are the blue crustaceans that we saw in Sorgan in Mandalorian Season 1. Now, the fact that they're using stolen Pike tech could potentially set up Peli's shop to get in trouble with the Pikes as Mando and Boba face the Pikes in this season.
Pikes do not mess around. Ever since they've been moving spice through the system, everything's gone to hell. Everyone's afraid of them and law enforcement won't even go near them.
And by law enforcement, I assume she means the New Republic X-Wing pilot bullets. If the New Republic won't prosecute the Pikes, it's just a troubling sign heading into this war. The completed fighter looks sick with its chrome colors. It's just a perfect metaphor for what Dave Filoni has been doing with these series, rebuilding components from the prequels back up by hand to prove how beneath the surface there was some really cool hardware there. Mando asks,
what happened to the droid port?
I hogged it out. You know, I figured with your disposition, you'd want to forego the astromech. Hey, watch your language around the customers.
Yeah, I like how R5 reacts to being called useless. But now, if you think about it, this droid port makes a perfect jump seat for Grogu. He test drives it through the same rock formations from the pod racing track in episode 1.
Dang, Barrick, she's fast.
Yes, of course, Dank Farrik, the Star Wars swear. And he continues through Beggar's Canyon, which was also on the pod race route. This is also where Luke and Biggs would fly their T-16s.
Luke, at that speed, will you be able to pull out in time?
Be just like Beggar's Canyon back home.
He even passes the same ramp that Anakin steered up to leapfrog Sebulba. The gate of that ramp is still busted. He clears the atmosphere and speed past that Rodian kid on the Starliner, but this alerts the New Republic X-Wings. The elder one is Captain Carson Teva, played by Paul Sun-Hung Lee, who showed up a few times in season 2 of The Mandalorian, and he even remembers Mando's voice and references those events. But the younger lieutenant is played by Max Lloyd-Jones, who played the stand-in of Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian season 2 finale. Mando returns to Peli.
How was it?
Wizard.
The same word for awesome used by Anakin's friend Kitster in Phantom Menace.
This is so wizard, Annie.
And Fennec Shand greets him, offering him credits to help Boba Fett, but Mando offers to help him for free.
But first, I gotta pay a visit to a little friend.
But will Grogu be too changed to greet Mando warmly? Will Mando need to rescue Grogu from that Jedi cult? We'll find out next time on The Mandalorian. We'll find out next time on The Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett. I mean, this is still his show, right? Hey, support New Rockstars by checking out our merch options at newrockstarsmerch.com. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EA Voss. Follow New Rockstars and subscribe to New Rockstars for more analysis of everything you love. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.